Should a good director be open to interpretation of a line, of a character, from an actor's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the collaboration, let's say, is part of, I think, where magic really can happen. And if I am so stuck in my ways as a director where this is it has to be this and only this, I'm just going to create so many problems for myself down the road. It might not be apparent, but like, you know, I do think that the director's role, though, of course, is to guide everybody towards a common vision. But collaborating in a way where, like, yeah, let's say an actor wants to do it this way, I'm always going to be open to that conversation, essentially. I may disagree or agree depending on what the answer is or where this is going, or at least maybe this isn't the right time for it, but I see what you're saying. There's 100 ways to kind of invite that in so that it's a safe space and people feel like they're being heard and listened to. I think that, for me, is one of the most important aspects of directing in general, is to be a collaborator. And if you tell people, or you give the impression that that you're not there for that, then it can be very off-putting for people that are working with you and working for you, even, to try to get your vision told. You know what I mean? So, but that doesn't stop it at an actor. It stops. I mean, it doesn't stop with an actor. It applies to any crew member, really, I think, in at the end of the day. And maybe it doesn't on $100 million movie where, like, yeah, I don't want to hear the like, or like, you know, I'm assuming that the PA that's there isn't gonna go up to the director with an idea, but I've never worked on that size, you know, story, and in general, I am of the opinion that if somebody has an idea that's gonna make this movie better, I want to hear it too. So, you know, like, it's exhausting too. And like, some people have great ideas that you never even think of because you're so focused on just getting the shot done or moving to the next setup or whatever it is, you know? That stuff is important if people feel like they can be a part of the process.
Sure. So if a character is so embodied in that actor and they're just like, you know what, I'm sorry, Thomas, I just don't think that she would do this in this scene. I feel like she would go here. You would be open.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I'm sure like that. There's been times where that's actually, like, difficult to hear because you're like, well, shit. I mean, like, the whole scene, I now need to rethink how it's going to get shot and stuff like that. But at least you're solving it at that moment, as opposed to like seeing it in the edit where it may be like even more problematic, or you have to reshoot the scene. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like sometimes you don't have the freedom to do those things either, and you just need to get it done. And as long as everybody's under the like, you know, that understanding too. I mean, there may be a time realistically where an actor says that, and I'm like, I'm sorry, we have to do this way, but can we find a way to make it a little bit more comfortable for you as your character? Or like, what can we do that simplifies how to make our day? I mean, because you have the realities of the production that you have to deal with as well.
Do you still recommend Judith Weston's directing actors?
You know, I haven't read it in a long time, but I do remember it being really valuable to me when I was young. So I think so. You know, there's a lot of things that I remember about it, but also, you know, again, like, I think that book, and actually any book that's related to filmmaking, is about providing people with a structure to begin their journey into this, you know, making a film or a short or whatever. It's a way to help you understand what the things are that you need to think about. At a certain point, it becomes less like I need to do it like this book said, and more like I'm going to do it my way, because this is what works for me. But I do think that all those things are valuable, especially for people who are starting out, for sure.
How is directing documentary subjects different than directing narrative actors, or is it the same?
It's so different that it's hard to actually tell you how. I mean, one is like, you're not directing doc subjects that much. I mean, at least I wasn't, and I haven't in my experience. With Zero Gravity, one, the subjects are kids, which is another challenge in and of itself. But also, they were already on a journey that I didn't really want to get in the way of. And I also wanted their experience to be genuine, and I didn't want to prevent them from having that experience. Those were two things that were very important to me. So, so what I did most of the time is film their day, like in the class, let's say for the sake of Zero Gravity, because they're coding satellites aboard the space station, and really try to use long lenses and get out of their way so they kind of forgot that we were around. We shot it as close, like, as intimately as possible, but that was one way that we did it, especially because of kids. And also, you're reacting constantly to what's happening in front of you. You're not setting up shots, really. You're being in the right place at the right time, and you have to anticipate often where that right place and right time is going to be. That was also maybe the hardest part, especially in the big event sequences, which were like at NASA generally for the film. We're like, oh, they're going to have the awards stuff here. They're going to be looking at the screens here. This is when they play. Like, I got to be in the right place to get any of those kids on camera and what their reaction is when those things happen. So I'm like, we had a schedule that was different than what the kids had, because we would have to be, 2 minutes before them so that we could make sure that we were where that we needed to be and things like that. Obviously, that's so different than a narrative, potentially, where you're scripting things and you're setting up your shots and you're communicating with the actors to give you your performances and all those things. But I mean, I think that there's some value, though, in adapting documentary approaches to setting up scenes in narrative in particular. We did set up some stuff in Zero Gravity, for instance, where it was like, okay, this is what we want. We're in the kids' home, let's say, with their parents or something. And this is what we want to do, basically. So you obviously are going to set up certain things like that, especially in the personal lives of it, so that you can kind of convey more personal aspects of who they are, and then they kind of run with it. But you're not really doing takes or anything like that. You're just sort of going. And that experience of doing that, I think, like, I'm really excited to apply that to some extent to how I set up certain scenes in a narrative, because I think that there is a naturalness that happened that was constant for the documentary, Zero Gravity in particular, as the director for it, that I just really am excited to see how to apply that in a narrative sense. Like Paul Greengrass is a really one of my favorite directors because of how he stages his sequences so that they're shot in a way kind of like documentaries. Obviously, they're going to go in and get coverage and things like that. But like even in like United 93, as an example, where they created that flight control room and then ran it as like a 2-hour setup is I think is how they would do some of those sequences, just to keep it constant and the intensity like real. That's fascinating to me. And doing the documentary stuff and narrative like makes me think that they can be linked, but it doesn't. They're not ever gonna. You can't really just take one and do the other either. Like it depends on the narrative of like your script in a certain case, and then a documentary is like the story is going to tell itself. So you just have to really prepare that you're in the right place and ready, I guess.
Did you see Framing John DeLorean?
No.
Because it was a mesh of documentary and narrative. And so you had, I think it was Alec Baldwin playing John DeLorean. Mm-hmm. And so he would reenact certain scenes, and then they would also show him in the makeup chair about to go into, a scene and how he would envision John DeLorean doing these different things. And then you saw actual footage from news reports and different things. So it was a great mesh. Yeah. And it was like a movie within a movie, and then they had all these different documentary filmmakers that had done movies on John giving their commentary. So it was just this great mishmash.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like documentaries are. I mean, you know, there's so many different ways to do it. They can be experimental. They can be archive based entirely with interviews and things like that. Like in my both for Phenoms and Zero Gravity, we you know, I opted for a Verrette kind of approach. Like, well, I want to be in the moment as much as possible. But of course, that's not that may be where it becomes similar in a sense, and what I meant talking about where you can cross over in the narrative sense, just from my experience. But I can absolutely recognize that anything is possible in either case, really.